warning, due to the way I recorded the audio for this video, my microphone is significantly more delayed than I thought it would be, so if I'm just sort of dying along with the song or playing the tambourine, it lined up when I did it, now it doesn't, and I can't fix it. Anyway, back to your regularly scheduled video. Wait, why am I over here? This is wacky! So I wanted to take a little bit here to talk about a question I've been asked 0 times, but I'm talking about it anyway, and you must have been wondering that if you're watching this video. Otherwise, you're just farming engagement, but whatever. More views equals more nothing. I'm not a monetizing creator yet. So I wanted to talk about how I make my music. It's not something I'm good at, but it's something I enjoy doing. So we're going to take a look here at the stem mixes of 2 of the projects I'm most satisfied with. Those 2 being the cover of Redial from Bomberman Hero, featuring JK Haza 1, and my Casio CTK691 cover of the Options menu theme from Sonic the Hedgehog Spinball. So we're going to start off with Redial here. Now, if you're not familiar, number 1, Bomberman Hero was an oddity in terms of Bomberman games. It was on N64, not to be confused with Bomberman 64. Here's how the song Redial sounds. Okay, so we've all heard that before. Here's what I did to it. So, yeah, it's a lot slower, excuse me. It's swung now, and what's with that? Well, I'd originally heard the song, I thought, okay, it's cool, but wasn't really for me. I'm not super big, like, drum and bass stuff. Then I heard a cover by Game & Sound of it. Very guitar-driven, yet still faithful to the original, and I thought, wow, he's actually turning it into something even better. And I thought, well, I'd like to learn how to do this. So I did. So the tracks we have here. We've got the bass played by JK Haza 1. We've got a piano from the Casio. We've got these synth strings. Got the drum kit. The guitar solo, some simple little plucky guitar chords. Again, those 2 done by JK Haza 1. Some maracas. Some synth chords. A synth whistle. A tambourine. A synthetic flute, a different piano, and a synthetic sax sound. So here's some of the things that I did. You'll notice I doubled up on a couple of the tracks. Starting off with the 2 pianos.
Alt control.
So if I just
Alt select enter. Leave it.
Mute everything else and unmute these 2 tracks.
Table C A piano 2 muted row. Enter. Table YM piano 2 mute enter. YM. Alt control shift U. Space speech on demand.
You'll notice here they're playing the same thing. reason why I doubled up on these two particular sounds is because they complement each other very well, and I also panned them in opposite directions. If I go down here to the synth chords, they're playing the same pattern. And if you don't believe me, well, and that synth, it's just a mellow synth on a mellow FM synth on a Yamaha Reface CS. It's a basic 2-op thing. It helps fill out the sound more. Which is also why I put in the synth strings. Because the synth strings, they're sustaining the chord, and the synth chords themselves, more rhythm. So I try and find things that complement each other or that fit well, which is also why I used the sax and piano. Well, no, sorry, the sax and flute sounds. For the most part, they're playing the same thing. The sax has a better attack to the sound, a better beginning to it. But because of the waveriness slash, it's a pseudo-tremolo or whatever, I'm not familiar with, flute technical terms, but on that flute sound, it provides a better sustain to it. And so the two complement each other very well, and that's what I like. I also do things like that, where I move it up an octave. They're not always playing the same thing.
Full speed title is selecting on Alt F4 base synth whist table synth whistle solid row synth whist SF selector space.
But yeah, the synth whistle comes into play during the second
Space speech on demand.
rep of the choruses. We're in rep 1 right now. Because of the way I have it panned, it kind of blends in on, if you're listening in mono. I'll increase it by 5 dB. Most of the time I didn't want the synth whistle to be super prominent in the mix. I just wanted to be something subtle, you know, you listen and you think, ah. But there's a couple of different things. At the ending, where there's 4 reps of the chorus, rep number 2, just regular synth whistle. Rep number 3, no synth whistle. Now it goes up an octave. Then here when it cuts right back into the A section melody, it will call and response. So that's the reasoning for that. The drums are the part I'm least satisfied with because of the way they were recorded. They're recorded with one microphone like this, with this interface. It might have actually been this mic, I don't remember. But the problem is the bass drum and more importantly the ride cymbal were so prominent there that it halfway drowned out everything else. You can't hear it there, but I'm actually hitting the closed hi-hat. Go. Hitting the same way I'm hitting the snare now, but that gets lost in the mix. As does towards the end. With the doubled up B section. Bum ba dum. Note the rhythm that I'm doing. Bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum. Listen how it changes here. Pretty much all you hear in the actual mix is just the ride cymbal. But here's what it sounds without the drums. So again, J.K. Haza here is playing some really simple guitar chords because, you know, he agreed with me that the pianos are really what's driving the chords, and you've got the synth chords and then the synth strings to help back it up. These were mixed in a little too... I wish I would have mixed it a little higher, but... And these are being played on a Taylor acoustic electric guitar. You have a guitar solo here being played on a Gresh solid body electric, and just listen. Pretty good, pretty great solo, honestly. Got him on the bass here, playing really good rhythm, honestly, that I really like. Good choice of notes. And I should have honestly mixed this in a little higher, but I did like a flanger thing to make it a little more noticeable. I'll just mix it in as high as it goes. So, yeah. So that's that. You have the simple tambourine. My cheap tambourine. Can you tell I'm messy in here? So that's most of it. The only other thing that I did in the final mix, I'm going to fade out at the end, was I used a trick called Verispeeding. I don't remember the exact number I used.
Title is Space 2.
This is a trick that's commonly used on funk records, disco records, or just single mixes of songs in general. By increasing the speed of, in analog world, the record player or the tape machine, or in this case just the speed. Not only does it increase the tempo, making it a little more danceable, but also between keys. It's the same equivalent as orchestras in neighboring towns would tune different. Like one orchestra might tune to A440, another might tune to A445 or something. And people would notice it. They wouldn't know why, but someone would feel different about that one. And I enjoy using Verispeed a ton. This song was recorded over a period of several months, with a gap in between the two main groupings of doing the work. There were several false starts to it, but we got it done, but that allowed for a nice fine-tuning of the mixing. Now for something that didn't get that. That's something I like doing to make sure all the tracks are working, because I've been known to select the wrong input sometimes. This is Spinball's Options theme. Now, if you've not heard the original, here it is. This don't sound too bad now, does it? So, This was done entirely using one keyboard, the Casio CTK691, my beloved. So here's how this works. For the power chords that are overdriven way too much in the original song, we got two tracks. One's a clavinet. The other's this synth guitar sound that I ran through distortion. Got a sax handling this main A section melody. And then this synth lead.
Full speed title is clav. Alt down, center. Space speech on demand.
So that's how those ended up working. Get some fairly basic drums. So with, you know, some power behind it. All these parts, as with Redial and anything else I do, all the parts are played by hand. There's no loopers in these, there's no MIDI programming, nothing of that sort. Not disparaging those that do it, I just can't. Come the B section. Got an organ here running through a slow Leslie. There's pan flute that handles the melody. Yeah, this synth brass that just does that. Whop, whop. That helps with the melody as well. And here you got everything kind of doing this. Tambourine in here helping out. A little bit of reverb on it. Got this iffy organ solo here. Now that was supposed to gradually speed up and I misapplied the effect. Because I did the Leslie in post. I just went with the Megalovania riff because I was out of ideas. I've always been terrible at solos. If I'm not sure. There's these synth chords which were meant to come in and fatten up the mix. But I didn't run a compressor and I mixed them in way too low, so you only occasionally hear them. And here's how the song sounds without them. So they do help to fatten up the mix. One other trick that I did with this song was I originally intended that organ solo to keep going through another B section. but I eventually realized that's not going to work. So during that, I just had like the tambourine track, which is just, you know, a separate drum kit. I had to do some insane things, and I knew I wasn't going to do anything there, so I just started messing around during it. You'll never hear this again. The way I cut that out was actually pretty simple. What I did was I scrolled through here. So I take this crash symbol and forward. And then what I did was I simply, so I lined it up sort of like this, except I put more effort in it then. And I just cut the top track. So I think I kind of muted out the symbol, but... Actually a little more natural here. Timing's a little off, but... And then here I was doing a fade out. Well, slow fade out. So that's how I made that. Now, one thing I will do sometimes is I will save an earlier mix of things with temporary tracks, just a temporary, quickly whipped up, careless thing, just to see, like, kind of get an envision of how it'll all come together. And I've got one for each of these, and they show some pretty drastic differences. Starting off here, we have an earlier cut of Redial. Now, this became significant because of something that went wrong. What had happened was I accidentally somehow corrupted the Audacity AUP3 project file, and we were part of the way done. We had the bass recorded, all the keys, including like all the synth stuff. I had some egg shakers recorded, not maracas, but egg shakers. And we had a guitar solo and a keyboard solo recorded. We needed the drums and the guitar chords, and we would have been done. But I nuked the original multi-track. But we had a choice to make. Eventually, on my external hard drive, I found a backup of the first few tracks, which was critically the 2 keyboards, the synths, the 2 pianos, the synth strings, the melodies. The most important things. The rest of it was just filler. And we had to decide, do we continue from this higher point that was worse, or do we go back to the original? It's like if you had a foundation, and someone came through and stole, like, half, like, I don't know, like, shot holes into half of the blocks you were using. Do you keep building from it, or do you just go back to the first few and then start anew? We eventually decided to start anew for a few reasons related to this mix. First one, the egg shakers were terrible. The mixing was bad. The bass line was largely the same as you find in the final. But the guitar solo, J.K. Hazelman was not too happy with, and in retrospect, I think the final was a lot better. And I intended there to be a keyboard solo. It's a much more mid-range heavy mix. You hear the synth chords a little more prominently here. You hear the egg shakers. I'm smacking them together, which, yeah, that's part of the reason why it sounds bad. I always intended to come back and re-record that track later. Add way too strong vibrato on that synth whistle. I just gone way too overboard with the effects on it. That was played on the guitar that resulted in the final chords, again, a Taylor acoustic electric. But he wasn't too happy with that solo, but what really threw me in was this temporary keyboard solo I'd come up with, and I recorded in. If we would have continued with this would have been stuck in the final. I'd always intended that to be temporary. It was just something I'd thrown in just to see, you know, how would it sound if I had a keyboard solo here. Now that thing, sorry about the notes, they suck at singing. I do sometimes use that if I'm playing this like on solo piano. I will sometimes use that as a right-handed part of the solo, but I play it, you know, better. But so there was a lot wrong with this mix, and in the end, I'm so thankful that we went back and built off of some of the earlier tracks that I had left, but yeah. Because this one, it's cool to look back on, but it would have been a lot worse. And here we have an earlier cut of the Spinball Options theme. I posted this online in an unfinished state, just to, like on Discord, I sent it to a couple of folks just to get some feedback on it, and I never got any. And I include a little message at the beginning.
Warning. This content has not been approved for viewing by the general public. Listening to this classified material is a violation of international law and is punishable by immediate execution. If you wish to proceed with listening, press pound. You have confirmed that you wish to proceed. Black helicopters have been dispatched to your location. Now playing in unfinished.
But before I just remembered something I should have mentioned about the earlier Redial cut. The reason why I ultimately decided to not do a keyboard solo in the final was because it messed up the flow of everything. Because the guitar solo was the same length as two melodies, which is the standard length. And I literally just earlier in the thing before I recorded some of the newer instruments, I literally just cut it out. I did it right on the beat. Is there a slight click on the left channel from the piano in the final? But it was masked by, there was a crash hit on the drums, and I had, well, and J.K. Hazel 1, at my suggestion, sustained the last note of the guitar solo out a lot further to help mask it.
Horribly mixed cut of the song cover I'm working on. Half of the tracks need to be re-recorded, and they will be. Plus, there's a solo I haven't recorded yet, so its part has been crudely cut from the recording.
So you can tell it's broadly the same, but the guitar's mixing a lot lower. Instead of a clavinet, there's a piano on the right channel. And the bass and drums are different, and there's not, like, the additional percussion. The bass I recorded because I didn't know what the original played in a certain section. I had to improvise, and I improvised poorly. And the drums, there was a unique issue with. Also, I use an a more realistic horn sound, but still synthetic, instead of just straight up just a synth. I also did a slower Leslie on the final in these sections. So here I didn't know what the bass was playing, and I did where it just sustained, the drums just sustain on that open hi-hat. I did that a smidgen earlier here, which is like more of a funk style thing, but the problem was it just completely ruined the flow of everything. Well, it was longer. I don't remember if I started earlier or I ended it later here or what I did, but it was longer and it messed up the groove. See, I don't know what I was thinking there. But it just goes to show that you're not always right on your first attempt, and it's better to go back sometimes and redo a lot of things. But that's an insight into how I make my music. And for anyone wondering, yes, I use Audacity. I know it has some limitations compared to something like Reaper, but number one, I'm used to using it. I'm fairly skilled at it now. Number two, plugins are an insanely good thing here. And number three, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It would take me years to learn Reaper the way I've learned Audacity. I know Reaper's accessible to the blind, but I like Audacity. I don't have any issues. There's nothing I found that I really can't do with it yet. Aside from like MIDI piano roll stuff, and I prefer to play things myself rather than... I prefer to play music, not code music. So, yeah, that's how I make my music. So, thanks for watching, and now, on to something better.